Hello students, hope things are going well for you today. The purpose of this video is to build on what you've learned about adding integers. Now we're going to get into subtracting integers. So it's not much different. You're going to find that it's much of what you already know. Maybe it'll kind of sound like a review. So here we go. Let's take a look at some of these things you're going to find, situations you'll find when you're subtracting integers. As we did with adding, we're going to take some notes and we're going to look at each situation one at a time and see if I can make sense of what sometimes is seen to be a hard truth. We could have a situation where we have a positive number minus a positive number. And again, we're only dealing with integers today, really because this rule applies to all numbers. We're just starting with integers to give you an understanding of what it looks like, and then you'll be fine if we're talking about rational numbers or other things you'll find that are a little more complicated. So positive minus a positive. We're going to have situations where there's a negative minus a negative. You remember this chart from when we were adding. You could have a negative minus a positive, or you could have a positive number minus a negative. My goal and my hope is to show you through patterns how in each of these situations, subtraction is nothing to be scared of. And as will always happen with assignments and tests, you'll always be able to use a calculator. Anyway, grab that over here and make sure that's a piece of what we do today. There you go. All right, here we go. So what if you got a positive number minus a positive number? What if you've got something like 5 minus 3 or 18 minus 12? I'm kind of teasing you, of course. You've seen stuff like this before. 17 minus 18. 24 minus 30. 180 minus 250, 1,800 minus 10,000. So anytime that you've got a number minus another number, a positive minus negative, just subtract like you've already done. You've done this since many years, elementary school. 5 minus 3, you don't even have to type it into the calculator. 2. 18 minus 12, you might already know that that's 6. You have a starting place on the number line, and then you go down to the left, you go down negative, you go down the negative direction, you go down 3, and it brings you to 2. You start on the number line, go down a certain amount. You start on the number line, you go down a certain amount. Now on this one, we're now getting into situations for the rest of your life where we'll end up in the negatives. Can you have $17 and someone takes away 18? Well, there's ways we could talk about how that does occur, how people do end up in debt. We could talk about many situations in life where negatives occur. Regardless of what it is, if you start at the 17 number on the number line and you go down 18 numbers from that, you can check your calculator to check my work, but you end up at negative 1. You know the 17 minus 17 is 0. Minusing 18, you're just going one more place on the number line. You'll be seeing negatives all over the place from now on. Up until now, maybe you've seen some or maybe you've known it's out there, but from this point on, it's just as much a part of your life as the positive numbers were before. So 24 minus 30, if you start at 24 on the number line and you subtract 30 off, you end up all the way down to negative 6. And just to check our work, start at 24 and you subtract off the positive number 30. We're using the subtraction button on this lesson. Yep, negative 6. All right, I think that I can maybe just move this around. You'll be all right now that you've seen what I'm doing. You understand what I'm doing. I can maybe make this a little more legible for you. So don't be afraid of these numbers when it turns into negatives. 180 minus 250. If you type it in the calculator, what I'm doing in my head, I'm doing a shortcut in my head. I'm just figuring out what the difference is because that's what negative is. It's a difference. I know the difference of these two is 70, and I know it's going to be into the negatives. That's just a shortcut. Please don't think you have to memorize the shortcut on this. Type it in the calculator. But I want you to understand the concept that, yes, you can start with a certain number and end up subtracting all the way down into the negatives. And if you type 1,800 in your calculator, take off 10,000, you're all the way down to negative 8,200. Let's say you've got $1,800 in the bank, but you want to buy a $10,000 car. Yeah, you're going to end up owing somebody $8,000. Don't do it. Don't do it. Wait, save the money. Anything other than going into debt. Okay, what if you have a negative number and you subtract off a positive? So let's say I've got -3 minus 8, -4 minus 10, -21 minus 21, -16 minus 34, -123 minus 242. This situation that we're looking at is really the exact same as this situation. We're starting at a number line. We're starting somewhere on the number line. -3, -4, -21. We're starting in the spot, and then minus, we're going to the left. We're going down the number line that many places. So if you start at -3 and you go down 8 spaces, you're all the way down to -11. And if you want to check your work, you have to type this negative button for a negative number. -3 minus 8, -11. I did it right in my head. Excellent. Again, like I've already taught you, you have to use that. If you try to use this number right here, I want to do -3. The calculator thinks you're doing something else. It thinks you're trying to subtract. So don't use that button. -4, if you start at -4 and you go 10 more down into the negatives, it's really like what you did with positive numbers, just going in that opposite direction to -14. Use your calculator if you'd like. -21, and then you minus 21 additional ones off of that, you're at -42. And if you start at -16, subtract off 34, your calculator will give you -50. And then right here, if you can do that in your head, do it in your head. It's negative something. We're still down in that negative part of the number line, but you can always just -123 minus 242. You'll end up with -365, I hope. So that's what happens when you have these numbers subtracting off a positive. You're just starting somewhere on the number line, and then you're going down to the left of that number line a certain amount. You're just going to be going down into the negatives, and that will be happening a lot for the rest of your life in school math settings. Okay, here's the fun ones. Here's the ones I like when you're subtracting a negative number off. So 3 minus a -7. And like I've told you so often, you'll see it written in parentheses. 12 minus a negative. Oh, I said I was going to do a negative, huh? I'll get to those. Let me come down here. These are the ones I really like. 3 minus a -7. 12 minus a -20. 24 minus -40. 380 minus a -200. Let's do one more. 1,234 minus a -1,234. Okay, so if you have a positive number minus a negative number. Now this concept of minusing a negative number, some people like to say it's confusing, but just think of it this way. What if I take away a negative? What does it mean when you take away a negative? That's a good thing. It's a good thing to take away a negative. Sometimes you'll hear people say, don't use a double negative. Don't never do this. Or don't not eat ice cream. Or don't not do your chores. When you have that double negative, it's a positive thing. If you're subtracting off a negative, if you're taking away negatives, you're doing a good thing. It's going up. And there's ways we could talk about it, and I could spend time reviewing it, but the general rule to remember is taking away a negative is a good thing. You can even just rewrite that as 3 plus 7. You can take these two negatives, this minus a negative, and this parentheses. I'm just going to kind of take it, and I'm just going to kind of squeeze a little plus in there and say, oh, now it's 3 plus 7. The answer is 10. Really? That's it? Yes, it is. 3 minus a -7 is 10. One way to think of it is that 3 is being held down by those -7s. As you move away each of those -7s, this 3 gets higher and higher to 10. But the math trick is if you see two negatives next to each other, just turn it into a positive. This is really another way to think of it is 12 plus 20. And 12 plus 20 is 32. 12 minus, 12 minus a negative 20 is 32. It really does. When you minus a negative, it goes up. That negative, that minus sign, it takes you the other direction on the other line. That's another way to think of it. Okay, so now that we know the pattern, 24 minusing a negative 40, you're really just adding 40 onto this, 64. And 380 minus a negative 200, if you take away 200 negatives, this is going to go up 200 to 580. You can check with your calculator. And let me just cover that up. If that was 1,234 minus 1,234, of course it's zero. Of course, the number zero. But you're not minusing the number, you're minusing the negative of it. So you're going up. It's a positive thing. Let's turn that into a positive 2,468. Have that in your notes. And the last one. Negative minus a negative. So I've changed these negative 3 minus negative 7, negative 12 minus a negative 8, negative 24 minus a negative 24, 360 negative minus a negative 200. On these ones, to resolve these ones, begin by using our pattern that I just showed you. Turn this into just a plain old plus. Turn it into, this starting point stays the same, change that into a plus 7. Because we know from minusing and adding, we're really going up the number line. Now, this is just a problem we already did before. Oh, I know how to add. I just have a starting point, a direction, and an amount. So if you start at negative 3, and then you go up the number line 7, you end up at 4. And to make sure of that, negative 3 minus a negative 7 is 4. Or negative 3 plus 7. Either way you look at that, you're still going to get 4. So whichever way works best or makes most sense to you. Negative 12, if you're minusing a negative 8, you're going to be going, that's a good thing. So you're going to go something above the negative 12. You can rewrite that as negative 12 plus 8. If you're minusing a negative, this number is going to get bigger. And bigger for these numbers is further to the right in the number line. You're all the way up to negative 4. You didn't make it all the way out of the negatives, but you did make it above negative 12 towards 0. You can put in your calculator to check on that. So what is this going to be? If it's negative 24 and I'm going to go up the number line 24, do you have a thought as to what it is? Negative 24, this is the same thing as plus 24. We're putting those two negatives together to make it a positive, make it a plus. Negative 24 plus, if I can write this 24, you've gone all the way up to 0. You're going up the number line to the right. And negative 30 minus a negative, that's like plus, so negative 360 plus 200 is negative 160. Negative 160. You can check with the calculator. So these are the 4 situations that might arise, and in each of those situations, it's what you do. Yes, you'll be using a calculator, but I'd like you to be able to understand the concept of what it means when you're subtracting a positive off of a positive off of a negative off of a positive, and a negative minus a negative. The tricks or the shortcuts are secondary. The calculator is secondary to just seeing what happens when you have this occur. All right, there you go. Thanks for watching. Have a wonderful day. I hope you enjoyed the assignment. Bye-bye.